Welcome students. This is a continuation of the previous class, and in the previous class I was discussing the importance of community and the social consciousness that is shared, the common consciousness that the community of the town in which the murder of Santiago Nassar takes place. We were discussing about that. We discussed about how Santiago Nassar acted as a deviant in the community, someone who does not fall into the common structures created by the society. So we will continue with the same idea that if Santiago Nassar is the deviant of the community, someone who does not follow the norms of the society, the customs that have been normalized within the society, Santiago Nassar does not follow that, so he making him the deviant of that community. So if that is the case, then we find that the Vicarios, that is the Vicario brothers or the entire family of the Vicarios, they are basically the gatekeepers of the community. This is something that is being said, or an opinion that Grace A. Ghomeshi gives us. So let us try to prove this. Let's see if we can prove this. So here another scholar, Robert A. Nisbet, in a book that I have quoted on the screen for you, he says that community thrives on two major supports, that is social function and social authority. That is, the function of the society governed by the authority of the society. That is what builds a community, that is what builds an idea of the community. Now herein comes our various probing questions, that authority legitimized or supported by whom? Authority maintained by what means? To what extent will these authorities go to, so-called authorities go to, in order to perpetrate or in order to maintain their authority? Social function, according to whom? What are the moral implications of this function, the ethical implications of this function? How does it affect the individual living in that society? How does that affect the individual who does not conform to the society? So all of these questions can be asked within this definition, within this idea of community, and that is how we probe a text, by asking questions with these via these definitions. So the Vicarios have both on their side, the Vicario brothers, they have both. The Vicarios have both the social function and the social authority on their side. The symbolism, the symbol that they stand for, or what they symbolize, they are twofold. Now what are those? The name suggests, of course, you can see the name suggests. Now we are trying to dissect the symbols over here. So the name over here, it suggests clergy or church authority in clerical affairs. A vicar is a priest, is a section, or is a designation of a priest in the church. It also indicates someone who is a representative of the people. A vicar in a village, in the church of a village, actually represents the religious authority, the religious sentiments, the religious affects of the people in that village. So the vicar is both a member, both symbolizes church authority and also a social representative, so therefore giving them the supporting pillars of acting as the function and also the authority that conforms, that creates that function. Alright. Hence, symbolically, the Vicario family acts as an intermediary for the church and the people. Yes, they act as an intermediary for the church and the people. Therefore, it is not very surprising, that if according to this schema of things, it is not very surprising that the burden falls jointly on Angela to accuse Santiago on the twins, to exact justice on him. So it is, according to this schema of things, as I was saying, the burden actually falls on Angela and the Vicarios, all the Vicarios, that is Angela Vicario and also Pablo and Pedro, the Vicario brothers. Why? Because Angela is supposed to defend this authority, and therefore she delegates the work in a way to the Vicario brothers, to Pablo and Pedro, who carry out the function of maintaining the conventions of the society, and they extract justice from the deviant Santiago Nassar. The fact that the twins run to the church for asylum, that is where they want to save face, they want to seek shelter in the church after the murder. After they murder Santiago, it signals directly an alliance between them and the church. Their mother, Pura, or the full name Purissima Vicario, that is their mother. This name also translates as the purest. It means the purest. So look at the allegorical or the symbols that Marquez has put to use in order to expose the society, in order to expose the prejudices of the society, the social tension, the communal violence that occurred. So he is using these various names standing as metaphors for power. Because the pure is also a very subjective word, and more often than not it is used in a negative connotation to marginalize, to keep away those people who do not conform to the quote-unquote pure. Now, what is purity? According to what dogma? According to what function? What function does it serve? So all of these questions can be asked over here. So as I was saying, their mother, whose name translates as the purest, she behaves quite devoutly, religiously and virtuously in public, and is constantly praised for her devotion to her husband and children. Mercedes, another character, she comments that Purissima looks like a saint, quote unquote, looks like a saint, and she appears to be an exemplum, a paragon, a holistic example of virtue and sainthood. She seems the ideal mother who has raised good and hard-working children in a traditional way. Since the brothers were brought up to be men, the girls had been reared up to be married. So this is what Marquez is writing. The brothers, I quote, the brothers were brought up to be men, the girls had been reared up to get married. This is the authority of Purissima functioning in the society, creating so-called ideal children who will conform to the conventions of the society. Women will be reared to get married, the brothers will be brought up, or the men will be brought up to be men. Now what are its connotations? That is something that we must question. However, Purissima is also portrayed as being hypocritical. Her characteristic trait, one of her characteristic traits is hypocrisy, because she forces Angela to marry Bayardo San Roman, a man she does not love. Now one would think that such a virtuous woman that Piora or Purissima is, she would be more understanding with her own daughter Angela, and she would be less interested in money and the wealth that the name of Bayardo San Roman would bring, with their collected economic support that the husband's family would provide the Vicario brothers. So someone who is the purest and the most virtuous and like a saint, she should not be caring much about money. But here we find her hypocrisy quite well exposed. Nonetheless, Purissima falls victim to a phenomenon that we can call that can be called as L.K. Dhiran, which translates into caring about what people might say. Caring about what people might say. So something that most of us fall victim to. Most of us, we fall victim to this phenomenon of L.K. Dhiran, or what we care a lot about what people would say because of the gaze of the other that surrounds us, the other person, the other subject who surrounds us and has the capacity to judge us, judge me, like I also have. So this is a vicious cycle. And Purisima falls victim to this phenomenon just like the entire town does. Apart from Angela, who is reborn after she's returned, she's reborn. Apart from her, everybody, including Purisima, they fall victim to the phenomenon of L.K. Dhiran. And Purisima's conduct towards Angela after her rejection by Bayardo is completely wicked, because according to Angela, and I will quote it on screen, yes. According to Angela, she or Pura was holding me by the hair with one hand and beating me with the other with such rage that I thought she was going to kill me. This is the purest mother that we are talking about. And if we come to Angela now, Angela, her name suggests, of course, it's the most clear to understand as far as names go. It rings the bell with angel. So she is deemed angelic by Bayardo San Roman. He thinks she is well named after seeing her for the first time. She's beautiful. Her beauty and the circumstances surrounding her birth also support the hypothesis that her name is a true reflection of nature. And when we first come across the character of Angela in the novel, we find that the narrator tells us or comments upon her that she had a poverty of spirit. So it is not a bad thing to be poor in your spirit. It means that basically you have channeled down your wants, your desires, and it is your spirit and your inner self that you want to rejuvenate all the time, that you want to make rich all the time. None of the materialistic richness, none of the outside world in all of its richness applies to you. So she is born with an angelic circumstance, and it is generally held that angels have a beautiful countenance, and Angela possesses this quality. She is born with a helpless air and a poverty of spirit around her, which actually corresponds to another biblical passage, the Gospel of Matthew. I'll just quote on screen again. Over here, yes, you can see. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Angela refuses to fake her virginity on her marriage bed as her friends advise her to do, which makes her a very strongly opinionated woman, someone who adheres, someone who endeavors towards liberty, someone who endeavors not to conformation of social function according to social authority, which her entire family represents, which her entire family symbolizes concretely. She is also an unconventional person on the ground of the town where the murder occurs, that is. So she also has a liberal air around her. because she refuses to fake her virginity on her marriage bed as her friends advised her to do, because, and I quote, because of, I quote, the pure decency she carried hidden inside. So it had to be hidden inside, because decent individual is not what she was brought up to be. She was reared up only for marriage, and after the marriage, as a wife, she would have to conform to the conventions, to the norms of the family to which she has been married. But here we find her that she has a pure decency carried hidden inside. She is ready to face the wrath of her husband and the judgment of the townspeople. So she does not fall victim to this phenomenon of L.K. Dhiran, as we see over here. She does not fall a victim to this phenomenon. She is ready to face the wrath of her husband and the townspeople, and in her words, I quote, she made up her mind to die. In asserting her individualism and rebelling against the social demands, the societal demands, Angela reveals her decency and purity. Purity of her spirit, not of the flesh, not of the bones, and she demonstrates a pioneering determination to break away from the shackles of this society, from the shackles of all destructive traditions, one of which is the primary theme in this novella, that is of honor killing, of destructive traditions. And Angela vehemently opposes those traditions and stands on the opposite side of it. She does not adhere, she does not conform to the destructive traditions of the society, protected by her family. And over the course of the events in the novella, in Chronicle, Angela becomes transformed from a very timid, weak-hearted woman to a confident woman. This timid Angela is forced into an arranged marriage, and I will quote it again on the screen. She got forced into an arranged marriage. She never forgot the horror of the night on which her parents and her older sisters with their husbands imposed on her the obligation to marry a man whom she had barely seen. And from this, the transformed Angela is not only mature and witty, but she also has a sense of humor, and she demonstrates a good judgment. The narrator notes, and we come to know that 17 years later, Angela has nothing in common with the person who had been obliged to marry without love at the age of 20. She does not allow public opinion to control her life, given that she openly shares the details of that accursed night with anyone who is interested. She does not shy away from truth, that is. She is resilient, she is strong, she resists all efforts of her mother to destroy her. She finds peace and solace in the realization that she loves Bayard de Saint-Roman. Recalling that, and I'm quoting again over here, suddenly when Mama began to hit me, I began to remember him. The blows hurt less because I knew they were for him. She goes, again I quote, crazy over him, out of her mind, and recognizes, I quote again, no other authority than her own, nor any other service than that of her obsession. She transforms from a little timid woman who is gullible towards, who falls under the ill will of her mother. She becomes a woman in charge of her own life. That is why I said that she was reborn. This is her rebirth. She becomes, and I quote, the mistress of her fate for the first time. Angela Vicario acts as a virgin bride for her husband after she was separated from him. And she decides to bridge the distance between herself and her husband. That is how she wants to conduct her life. She remains faithful to Bayard de Saint-Roman, the person whom she did not love at first sight. It grew on her. The love grew on her. She grew to love Bayardo San Roman. That is how a mature relationship flowers for a longer period of time. And she tries to bridge the gap between herself and her husband. And even though we can say that this actually feeds into the stereotype of a woman, that a woman needs a man to be complete, the societal stereotype, she takes control of her own life. She does not allow her situation as a rejected wife to determine her life. She takes charge of her destiny. It is her own wish which she wants to fulfill, not under the duress of her mother, not under the social function or the social authority that the Vicario stand for. And the transformation of Angela, as she writes letters to Bayardo, can to some extent be analyzed on the basis of another theoretical phenomenon called liquid identity. What is this liquid identity? So Zygmunt Bauman, in his book that I have written on the name that I have quoted on the screen, he views identity as negotiable and revocable, that it is to be invented rather than discovered. This is what he calls liquid identity. And Angela negotiates through her identity. She takes up the identity that has been thrusted over her by her mother, by the society, making her only a woman who has no other function in the society than to be married and then to make children, and that is it. So she takes up that identity and she negotiates with it through her life. She does not conform to the common ways and means of other girls, something that her mother would also say to her, and that she needs to hide the fact that she is not a virgin. So she does not do that. She negotiates with the situation as well, and she discovers her identity and does not let the imposed identities on her define her. So she invents her own identity. She does not discover, I just said the opposite, she does not discover again the identities that have been imposed and thrusted over her by the society. That does not deem an individual to be more important. that a society that does not care about the individual desires of anyone, let alone a woman. So that is why we can say that what Angela possesses or shows is a sort of a liquid identity. And we see various identities displayed by Angela as well. She lives her life as a rejected wife. I'm quoting, rejected wife, similar to that of an old maid. But in the approximately 2,000 letters that she has written to Bayardo San Roman, she becomes a lucid, overbearing mistress of her own free will. Quote close. She is a secondary virgin. She is a fiancée, a furtive sweetheart, and she is an indignant, abandoned wife and a lover. So all of these very contradictory adjectives that can be used to define her. A secondary virgin. She is not a virgin, yet she did not take up a lover after she was returned to her family house by Bayardo San Roman. She is a fiancée, of course, she is engaged to Bayardo San Roman. She is a furtive sweetheart, as in the possibility that Bayardo San Roman could have really fallen in love with her, did fall in love with her, but the love that was hindered because of the societal restrictions. The man also falls under that structure. The man is not outside of the societal restrictions. So we can also say that the Vicario brothers, they were also, it was also an imposition upon them to carry out the murder, because if they did not, how can the fact that they were brought up to be quote unquote men, how can this fact be justified? As long as you do not know how to protect the so-called honor of your family, that basically comes and manifests itself as a murder, as criminal activities and nothing else. So Angela then is a furtive sweetheart as well, and she's an abandoned wife who is indignant always with the probability that her engaged partner, that her husband would return to her. With her rebirth comes a renewal of her mind as well, as she realizes she can be whatever she wants to be and that she can live above societal restrictions. Her efforts pay off when she reunites with her reluctant husband after 17 years. She becomes a symbol of enlightenment by proving that there is an alternative way for women to overcome social barriers. It is not just a woman cannot overcome social barriers by hiding their virginities. They do not rise to respect, they do not rise to the occasion which calls for individualism, which we define as individualism. So we can say that Angela was reborn as she invents herself above societal restrictions, above social barriers. Thus, with Angela's example, Garcia Marquez proposes a new form of love, a new definition of honor, which is love. Angela honors the agreement, the marriage agreement that she had made with Bayardo San Roman. She does not, that is her version of honor. She decides for herself. Remember, it is not imposed upon her. From the very beginning, she has been a bit defiant. She could have easily hidden the fact that she is not a virgin, but she chose not to do that. She could have easily married again, tried to fallen in love with someone else, but she does not do that. She falls in love with Bayardo San Roman slowly. It grows upon her, and she sticks to that love. She sticks to that love with hope, which answers her eventually. So Marquez basically gives us a new definition of honor, which is nothing but love, and not chastity, not purity. Angela's worth shall not be determined by the fact that she is virgin or not. Her chastity does not determine her worth. It does not determine her identity, her individual identity. So she is defined by honor, which is actually love, and she is not defined by chastity. Her transformation shows that honor is not about the preservation of a woman's virginity, rather the sharing of love between two individuals who are accepting of each other. You honor each other's wishes. You honor each other's individual wishes. The fact that your partner in life, in crime, in death, whatever it is, the fact that your partner is a separate person, an individual with his or her own desires and wants and wishes and emotions and sentiments, his or her own family background, his or her own ideology, his or her own philosophy. The fact that you realize that the partner is a completely different individual from me, and yet you honor that difference. That is how Marquez defines love over here, between two individuals who basically honor the differences between them and do not stick the role of honor to the physicality of the person, be it a man, be it manhood, or be it a woman, being womanhood. Yet we can still wonder why Angela would condemn a man, that why did she accuse Santiago Nassar, or she agreed to the accusation, that why would she condemn a man considered by many to be innocent to such a cruel death? She is still insistent many years later that Santiago Nassar is responsible for her violation. It is rumored that she is protecting someone she truly loves. Everyone talks about it in hushed voices and hushed tones, that she is basically protecting someone whom she truly loves, making her love and waiting for Bayardo San Roman a farce, making her accusation on Santiago Nassar a lie and a criminal activity. But she insists even after so many years, even after more than a decade, she insists that it was indeed Santiago. And it is rumored that she chooses Santiago as the culprit because she thinks her brothers would not dare challenge him. This is also rumored that Santiago Nassar, being a strong man, someone who is heavily built and may easily overpower a couple of men, a couple of boys, but that is why it has been rumored inside in the town that she pointed the Vicario brothers, her brothers, towards Santiago Nassar because she did not really think that they could challenge him. So in her role as an unchaste angel, over in this context, she is the unchaste woman for the family, of course, for the entire society which believes in this honor killing ritual. So as an unchaste woman, an unchaste angel, or a messenger of fate, we can put it like that, Angela Vicario prophesies the death of Santiago Nassar. So she acts angelically or like an angel even in here, as she prophesies, as she decides, as she prophesies that Santiago Nassar will definitely be dead. Death will come to him. Santiago Nassar, whose name already symbolizes, we have already discussed that, whose name already symbolizes that a brutal death is in store for him. Angela pronounces judgment on Santiago, leaving her brothers, church emissaries, other church people, and the people to carry out the sentence. And I will quote it on the screen. Here. She pronounces judgment on Santiago, and that of course leaves her brothers and all of the clergymen and the people to carry out the sentence, people who were complicit in the murder, as they failed to inform Santiago even when they knew. So she only took the time necessary to say the name. She looked for it in the shadows. She found it at first sight among the many easily confused names from this world and the other, and she nailed it to the wall with her well-aimed dart, like a butterfly with no will, whose sentence has always been written. So basically, Angela pronouncing Santiago's name, it creates a permanent, it becomes a stone record, a record on stone, a writing on stone, writing on the wall for Santiago Nassar. It becomes his fate. And Santiago Nassar was already dead, even before the Vicarios actually murdered him, because the death was already planted in the minds of the Vicarios. It was already planted, the act was planted, its justification was planted according to the societal traditions, and it was carried out. This particular paragraph also points us towards the twisted narrative structure of the novella, like a butterfly with no will, whose sentence has always been written. That is, Santiago Nassar's death already happens even before the readers or the audience. We come to understand why is it happening, how is it happening, what does it lead to. The death already happens before we can even come to these questions, before even we can make an idea about the man being murdered at the first place. So on the one hand, Angela Vicario's predicament is representative of all the women in the novel, whose wills and desires are dominated by their family and the patriarchal society, since she is forced into a loveless marriage, of course. And on the other hand, Angela Vicario, like women with male relatives, has the power to accuse men who abuse them. So it's a very practical thing to say that with our male relatives, we actually have the power to accuse men who abuse us, with the thought that the male members of my family will be protecting my honor. It's it's a quite a common fact, and Vicario, a representative of the people or women in the case, is an avenger of the voiceless young virgins who have been accosted by Santiago Nassar, who has been so Vicario, the name itself, it becomes an avenger for all those innocent young virgins who may have been accosted, who may have been formerly abused by Santiago Nassar, something we really cannot completely put out of the equation, given the fact that we know Santiago Nassar's impure intentions towards women, the way that he behaves with Divina Flor, his cook's daughter, the fact that he thinks that each and every woman is his own property to touch and see and feel and do whatever he likes to do. So Vicarios become the avenger, and they represent all of the innocent virgin. They represent the honor of all of the innocent virgins who have been previously accosted and abused by Santiago Nassar. Thus, Santiago's death may help maintain the sense of community by serving as a reminder and a deterrent and a punishment for men with similar intentions and habits. True, we can come to this conclusion that Santiago Nassar's death helps become a case in hand, an example. He exemplifies a situation that other men will also face if they do not conform to the norms and conventions of the society, who have similar intentions and habits like himself. They will also be facing the same fate. Other characters who have biblical biblical importance, significance, that is, and how they inform the sense of the community. So let's see. First is Poncio Vicario, or Poncio Vicario. He is, of course, the father. Poncio Vicario, the name, it alludes to Pontius Pilate. Poncio Vicario was also blind, which again alludes to Oedipo Rei or Oedipus Rex. Poncio Vicario, when he dies, Angela says that his moral pain carried him off. Angela says this. Now let's assess all of these elements. Poncio Vicario is the father, therefore making him the man of the house, the supreme authority over the house, even though we know that the Vicario house is really controlled by Purissima Vicario, but however he is who represents the family. He is the name of the family. His name alludes to Pontius Pilate. Who was Pontius Pilate? If you do not know, Pontius Pilate was someone who handed over Jesus to the Romans. The Romans who were looking for Jesus, he handed over Jesus to the Romans, and therefore making this allusion really applicable to Poncio Vicario, because we can put it in both ways. He may be seen as someone who violates Angela. He may be the real violator of Angela. He might be having incestuous relationships with his daughter, and he puts his daughter, he hands over Angela, the angel, he hands over Angela to a man whom she does not love, and at the same point of time it is his his own, we may assume this, it is his own activities that lead to the death of Santiago Nassar, someone whom we have connected to Jesus Christ or to a Christ-like figure in the previous class. The fact that he is blind, it alludes to Oedipus Rex again, someone who gouged out his eyes after he realized that he had committed incest and patricide, that is, killed off his own father. So Poncio Vicario, conducting incestuous relationships with his own daughter, who might be accused of deflowering his own daughter and sending Santiago Nassar to death. His name also, his blindness also correctly alludes to Edipo Rey, and we can say that it is because of his incestuous relationships with his daughter that blinds him the moral pain and eventually gets him to death after his own sons are imprisoned. And it can also be said, it can also be assumed, I will give you the names of a few critics who have connected the dots like this, one interpretation of the situation, the fact that Purissima Vicario was so cruel to her daughter, the fact that she would hit her with rage, yet stealthily, that is, nobody else would know what is happening, who is that Angela is being beaten to almost to death by her own mother. So she is full of rage, but stealthily beats the life out of Angela, because it is only she who knows the fact that her husband has carried out incestuous relation with her daughter, and she blames Angela for the fact that for this fact, and that if Angela ever pronounces the fact, it ever comes out of her mouth that it is her father who committed the act, who deflowered her, then the honor of the family would be completely washed away. It would be completely washed away, and they would be utterly disrespected in the community, and a community which holds honor so highly. Of course, they will try to hide the fact that an incest is being carried out inside their own walls. The protectors of the community, the vicarios, the avengers of innocent virgins. So this can never come out of the family, this can never come out of the mouth of Angela, and that is why perhaps her mother beats her so much, and that is why Angela had to take the name of Santiago Nassar, a so-called outsider to the community who has lecherous habits, who is promiscuous in nature. Santiago Nassar makes the perfect scapegoat, makes the perfect sacrificial lamb in this entire scenario. So what are the name of the critics? So the first name, কোনো এরকম অর্ডারে কিছু লেখা নেই, just the first name that I'm mentioning is John S. Christie. In the article, and I'm just naming the article, Fathers and Virgins, Garcia Marquez's Faulknerian Chronicle of a Death, and the other critic who makes these allusions and makes these interpretations is Hannah Zander. In the article, it's written in Spanish. The article is somewhat, it's called the incest in Chronicles of a Death Foretold, a proposed lecture for the novel of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So these are the people who make these interpretations. The name Pedro and Pablo, Peter, Paul, spearheaded or led, that is, the evangelical mission of the Christian religion. That is, they were they were the apostles, the primary apostles. So Pedro and Pablo, they allude, they refer to Peter and Paul. And Garcia Marquez employs the names of the twin brothers to underline the religiosity, the religious faithfulness of the Vicario family and their role as intermediaries of the church. They are intermediaries of the church. As members of this priestly family, quote unquote priestly family, the twins are quote unquote ordained, that is religiously legitimized. The twins are religiously legitimized or ordained to murder Santiago. It is their divine duty to carry out the Christian religion, the teachings of Christian religion, chastity, purity, honor, love, the way that they interpret it, the way that the church interprets it, not according to the individual desires, but according to the larger structure of power. So as members of this priestly family, the twins are ordained to murder Santiago, and they fail at various attempts to escape this hideous task. They want to escape this task, but they fail as they continue in their continuous attempts to escape the task. As representatives of the people, as emissaries of the people, the Vicario brothers, they are responsible for upholding the honor of the community. And the townspeople do not intervene either, because matters of honor are considered to be sacred. Let's see what Marquez writes over here. I'll quote from the text. Matters of honor are considered to be sacred. So this is what he says, this is what he writes, that most of those who could have done something to prevent the crime and still didn't do it consoled themselves with the pretext that the affairs of honor are sacred monopolies, giving access to those who are part of the drama. And therefore, the mother of Prudencia Cotis, another character, Prudencia Cotis, betrothed, that is engaged to Pablo. So her mother says, underlines the urgency of resolving the matters of honor, and she says that honor does not wait. And their failure, if the Vicario brothers actually failed to repair their sister's honor, firstly they thought that it could repair the honor. So, and if they failed to maintain this thought, if they failed to repair their sister's honor, it would make them weaklings or unmanly in the sight of the society. And that is why Prudencia Cotis not only supports the decision of the Vicario brothers, but she also withholds her consent to marry Pablo as long as he does not do what, I quote, he does not do, and I quote, what a man should do. She waits for 3 years until they get out of jail. And another character, that is Clotilda Armenta, who is a milk shop owner, jar kache Santiago Nasar goes to buy milk, and immediately after she closes the shop, he is killed. So she could have actually saved him, but that does not happen. So Clotilda Armenta hopes that the colonel, that is the judge, they will spare these boys because of the horrible duty that is fallen on them. It is a responsibility that has fallen upon the Vicario brothers. But and they fail to escape their duty. They are reluctant towards carrying out this duty, but they fail to escape it. And we find Pablo saying Pedro in a very significant line. He says that there is no way out of this. It is as if it had already been done. Their fates have been sealed by the controlling society in which they live. Patriarchal, religious and structured and rigid society, communal society in which they live, their fates have already been sealed. Their responsibilities have already been written. They have to act like a man. They have to honor the word. They have to honor their woman. Otherwise, they will not get wives. It is a responsibility that has been fallen upon them. And even though the people of the town recognize that it is a hideous task, yet the brothers, they have to carry it out because honor cannot wait. And so, the sacrifice or murder is done publicly with the townspeople as partakers, as participants in the incident, who take up positions around the square to witness the crime. Santiago Nassar's death was therefore a crime for which the whole community might be blamed. And even in the court, the Vicario brothers console themselves and defend their actions by repeatedly citing, quote unquote, the legitimate defense of honor, and with the goodwill of people as well as tradition, the tradition of social function, social authority, all of these circles to which the Vicario family perfectly sits. They are the representatives of these ideals, with their names, with the biblical references to their names, with how the creator, the writer, that is Marquez, creates these characters. So the goodwill of the people as well as tradition on their side, they are released. They are exonerated of their crimes. They believe that they were innocent before God and men solely because the crime had to do with honor and nothing else. They showed no remorse and claimed they would commit a crime 1,000 times for the sake of honor. And although the Vicario brothers spearhead or lead the sacrifice of Santiago Nassar, the novel makes it aptly clear that the entire community is responsible. And a similar collective responsibility can also be found in the Bible. Again, if we read, in the Gospel of Matthew, verse 27, line 25, chapter 27, verse 25, His blood is on us and on our children. That is, the fact that Christ was killed, the responsibility was shared by the entire town, the entire people, and even in the generations to come. And the community of the people, they do not even consider Angela and Santiago Nassar to be victims. In their eyes, only Bayardo San Roman is the victim because he loses everything after being married for only 5 hours. Thus, fate or destiny deals him a hard blow according to them. The people take for granted that the other actors, and I'll quote it on the screen, the people take it for granted that the other actors in the tragedy had been fulfilling with great dignity. Just a moment. The other actors in the tragedy had been fulfilling with great dignity and even with a certain grandeur their part of destiny that life had assigned. Santiago Nassar had expiated the insult. The brothers Vicario had proved their status as men, and their seduced sister was in possession of her honor once more. Therefore, the tragedy that fell upon them had been fulfilling with great dignity because all of these people, they have been exonerated of all the things that they have done. Santiago Nassar rightfully got his deserved place because of the insult that he carried out. The Vicario brothers proved their statuses as men, and the seduced sister once again got back her honor. So, leaving out only Bayardo San Roman in this equation, who is the only person who has lost everything. So So now we have spoken about the idea of the community, the deviant in that community, the gatekeepers of the community, what represents the social order. Now let's see what represents the chaos in this community. Where are the representatives of social disorder? Disorder, of course, in accordance with the conventions of a society. So through the example, we can say through the example of Maria Alejandrina Cervantes, a sex worker. She's a sex worker, a brothel owner. So through the example of her, Garcia Marquez shows the double standards of community with regards to sexual conduct. In this patriarchal and macho society, this cult of the ideal of virginity that I had spoken about in the last class, it is so elevated, it is so made significant amongst women, but it is not expected of men, because they are free to have premarital and extramarital relationships as and according to their wishes. In this context, Garcia Marquez draws some ironic comparisons between Alejandrina Cervantes and the Holy Mother. Maria connotes the loving mother of Catholicism. Maria, it means Mary, it translates into Mary. So she connotes, that is, she signifies the loving mother of Catholicism, and her clients find tenderness and comfort in her arms. Remember the text that we were reading, that the narrator finds peace in the apostolic lap of Maria Alejandrina Cervantes, which can obviously be considered as a hint of her semi or half religious function. The name Alejandrina is a feminine version of the name Alexander. Yes, it is. And Alexander was a name that was assumed by 7 popes. 7 popes assumed the name of Alexander in the early history of Christianity. And the original, we can also say, I'll just quote a critic. So look at what Pridmore says, advancing as he gives a more contrary explanation of the origin of moral implication of Alejandrina's name. He says that it is probable that the name Alejandrina was chosen as a reminder of the famous sinner of Alejandria, who ended up becoming Saint Mary of Egypt. So, half-jokingly, Garcia Marquez starts showing us a world where morality is usually presented as upside down. Very well put over here. Morality is presented as upside down. Someone who was a devout and avid sinner is transformed, is converted into a believer and becomes a saint. So, morality is a very... The morality that we have at hand, the end product, it has a very twisted origin. That is what Richard Pridmore tries to say, and that is why he says, according to Pridmore, that is why Garcia Marquez shows this name. However, we can disagree with it as well, because Alejandrina actually has a positive role, does play some positive role in the novel. So she does not really represent the twisted morality of the communities. She may, according to one interpretation, but we can also interpret it otherwise, because she displays authentic grief when Santiago dies. She orders all her workers, female workers, to dye their clothes black in order to show mourning for the dead. And through Alejandrina, we recognize that a sex worker living on the margins of the society, the fringes of the society, they provide comfort, compassion and tenderness, of course, to men. Thus, they substitute the role of the church in one way. We can say it like that. She also acts as a foil to Purissima or Pura Vicario, who leads a more dignified and open life than other women in the village, And while she while Alejandrina is considered liberal and non-conformist, that she does not, of course she does not conform to the morals of the society, she is a prostitute, so she is a non-conformist. The society will never accept her as a part of its community. She is in the margins, she is in the fringes, she is the counter culture of the society. So while she is considered to be liberal and non-conformist and a possible heroine, the narrator in the novella highlights her sexual independence, in that she is the one, I quote, who does away with my generation's virginity. However, even when women are depicted as independent or non-traditional, they are still seen as serving the interests of men. So even in independence and in your non-conformity, you serve the ends of men. And it is again interesting that when we examine the role of the church in the novel, it is interesting that Father Amador and Purissima, they share the same name, Carmen, the same middle name of Carmen, a fact that links them as representatives or emissaries or messengers of the church. The father's name is Father Amador, which means lover in Spanish, and which is an open-ended reference to sexual love, but not to brotherly love or godly love as advocated by the church. The word amor in Spanish, it does not really mean godly love or brotherly love or fraternal love. It means romantic or sexual love. So Father Amador, lacking this charity, his name does not allude to the selfless love for God. So he lacks this charity, and he fails to be his brother's keeper. He fails in that brotherly love, in that common fraternal love, and he fails to protect Santiago Nassar. He fails to be his brother's keeper, and he fails in his duty to save Santiago's life. When the priest hears the warnings of Clotilda Armentina and others about the plot that was being hatched to murder Santiago, what does he say? I quote, "The truth is, I didn't know what to do." This is neither here nor there. He does not take any conclusion. He does not make any opinion, any suggestion, no advice, no religious interference on his part. So this is a very surprising comment. He seems to have forgotten that not only is his role he seems to have forgotten that it is his role as a mediator, but that is when other people come to him with a problem, it is his role, it is his responsibility to mediate that problem. And it is also his responsibility to abide by the 10 commandments of Christianity, one of which forbids killing. So Father Amador's inaction demonstrates that older, outdated traditions, and the fact that these older and outdated traditions hold more sway than religion. The religion does not hold. These older and outdated traditions are the real hands that have the grasp over a community, and not religion. And in his statement, we see the ineffectiveness, the outdatedness of the church as the guiding light of society. So the church really, or the religion really, does not guide the community. The religion, the church, it condemns murder. It condemns taking another's life. It supports mediation. It supports confession. It also supports a morality which is twisted, wherein a sinner can turn into a saint. That is what Christianity stands for. But it is the outdated traditions, the older traditions, that hold a firmer grasp over the society. And Father Amador's failure to mediate also represents the failure of the church. And it actually leads us to that proverb that the blind leading the blind. It leads to this proverb, the blind leading the blind. Again, a biblical statement from the Gospel of Matthew. And when Amador says, and I will quote, Amador says again, I am quoting, "My first thought was that it wasn't any business of mine, but something for the civil authorities. But then I made up my mind to say something in passing to Placida Linero. Yet he forgot all about this intention because of his preoccupation with the bishops arrival. So he fails in his duty completely and utterly. And this is where I would like to end or conclude my lecture upon the idea of community and the partakers, the participants in that community, what they symbolize, what they stand for, what are the effects, the connotations, the significances of their names, their actions, their morality, and how they bring about the eventual death of Santiago Nassar. However, we will be taking up several other perspectives as well, which will not be dealing with biblical references. We will deal with the creativity, with the imagination of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the original creation that is this novel, and we will try to read it from that perspective. We will analyze it from that perspective as well. Thank you very much.